Welcome back to Fast Market here on the Schwab Network. It's time for our cash tag segment. For that, let's bring in our next guest. It's going to be Megan Brantley, VP of Research at LikeFolio. Welcome back to the show, Megan, and happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yes, happy St. Patrick's Day. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. So, Megan, this stock pulled back pretty sharply the last couple months of 2024. Uber did, and this was based on the fact that, hey, maybe autonomous driving is going to hurt this company when, a year, 2 years ago, we were talking about that's when they're really going to start to make money is when they don't have to pay drivers, right, at this point. But that kind of flip-flop. But now we're seeing a big boost in the stock so far in 2025. Do you guys have the data that supports some moves?
Yeah, so whenever you look at Uber, this has, I think, been a bit more volatile over the last year, but whenever it all shakes out, it's down about 4%, 3.5%, 4% over the last year. So not a massive change. However, it is recovering some from the massive drop after Tesla's robotaxi event. And I think that there are two lenses where you can look at Uber. You could look at how it's executing now, how it's growing right now. And at least on our data, we're starting to see, some resilience in the consumer. I think that there were initially some fears that if consumers pull back on spending, that this could impact a name like an Uber. And our data, at least on the app front and on the web visits front, even for its food delivery segment, Uber Eats, looks pretty positive right now. We have growth on a year-over-year basis, but I think that robo-taxi factor that you mentioned remains a bit uncertain. Uber, in a sense, isn't in the driver's seat here. It doesn't have the software. It doesn't have the technology for autonomous driving, but it certainly has the platform that could be leveraged by multiple autonomous driving partners, and that's what it's trying to do with Waymo. And so there's certainly potential there. Then I think that there's always the wild card factor in a name like a Tesla that has the vehicles, has the fleet, and the technology. It doesn't necessarily, Tesla doesn't have to use Uber. I think that that's the big risk and uncertainty whenever we look at robo-taxis right now, and that's why the stock was deemed so much. So from a short-term lens, at least in our data, we actually see some nice signs from Uber. But on the long-term lens, we see a little bit more uncertainty because we're still waiting to see how will robo-taxis actually play out. And right now, we really don't know.
Yeah, Megan, the robo-taxi disruption was real, and it affected the stock. And really, if you think about it, other than that one-day surge up to $87, it spent a lot of time kind of stopping around that 80 level. But their ability, their user base, and their leadership in ride-hailing makes someone is going to cut a deal with them. Remember, because that Uber app is really the strength of Uber. Besides that, they're very asset light. It's that app that links the driver to the rider. And if I don't know, we don't know yet if Tesla's going to have that app to do the same thing. So is there a future partnership there? Is there, because people aren't going to just leave Uber right away the minute self-driving comes, because some people won't trust it, just like the move from internal combustion to electric is slower than everyone thinks. So there's a lot of reasons that the Uber disruption is a little overdone and not there yet. And then you're ruling out the chance to make a deal along the way where they are the app for automated driving. So there's still a lot of things, but this is a company that has so much technology, so much user base, such a big moat around it that I can't imagine they're not a serious player going forward, Megan.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that they have, millions of consumers who are relying on their app, whether it's taking them from point A to point B or having, food delivered, having items delivered. They've extended even just beyond, food delivery. And so I think that this is a company that has a vision. If you're looking at an Uber versus a Lyft, we would say Uber is the company that has this bigger vision and larger scale desire to be a major player in logistics, not just ride hailing. And so I think that that's something that the company definitely has going for it, and it's proven that it can execute. A couple of years ago, we were talking about, would this be a profitable company? And it is, and it's one that is still growing its user base. And one thing that we have seen too, I would say, is that from a consumer front, it really comes down to who provides the better platform, the more convenient platform, and the most low-cost platform. And so if that is Uber, then, and right now it does look like on our data that looks like it is Uber if you're looking at an Uber versus a Lyft. And I think that that's a really big selling point if the company is trying to leverage its platform to partner with other autonomous vehicle technology providers. Especially, this data is showing you we broke down that Uber Eats and that Uber and Lyft all as different brands, but at large, when we look at Uber and Lyft, Uber commands a much larger market share versus, say, a Lyft. And so I think that it definitely has a compelling selling point as a partner for autonomous vehicle technology, but that part, at least for now, remains a bit uncertain. So as you mentioned, perhaps a bit of that pullback from the robotaxi event was a bit overdone. So it makes sense that we see this recovery right now for Uber.
Bill Ackman, he bought 30.3 million shares. That gave the stock a big boost. It's up over 33% from those lows that we saw at the end of December. But when you look at this stock, they're partnering with Waymo already. Megan, do you guys have any data that says that, hey, if we go to autonomous or robo-taxis, that nobody's going to use Uber? Because to Kevin's point, I mean, it's about the app and connecting those. Or does Tesla create their own app that, they bring their autonomous vehicles to you? Because as Kevin's always mentioned, you still have to buy the car, right?
Yeah, I wish I knew the answer to that. I wish I knew what direction Tesla was going to go there. I think that whatever Tesla decides, it will have a big impact on Uber stock. So that's something just to be aware of in the meantime. But at large, we still do think that Uber's largest growth potential really hinges on its ability to leverage that autonomous driving technology that could really help improve growth and sustain pretty massive growth for the company and for the stock. And so right now, that's a bit uncertain, but that's certainly the biggest potential growth catalyst that we see long term, and that remains to be unseen. But the potential for partnership is certainly there. The data is certainly there whenever you think about just the mapping and raw data that Uber possesses when you start to think about the autonomous vehicle space. But right now, a bit uncertain. I can say, at least near term in our data, it's nice to see some positive momentum for Uber's brands on the consumer front. It's nice to see that consumer app usage proving resilient, especially as we talk about when a lot of other names, the consumer really being pinched.
All right, positive data on Uber once again. Great stuff as always, Megan. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right, that's Megan Brantley, VP of Research at LikeFolio, breaking that down. Kevin, they're typically, pretty positive on this name.